The mahogany door was slightly ajar. Just 3 inches of space between my world before and my world after. Through that gap I could see the afternoon sunlight streaming across Oliver's pristine office, illuminating the prestigious law firm's logo etched into the glass partition. I could hear the soft murmur of voices, his voice, warm and intimate in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in months. I pushed the door open wider. And there she was. My sister Vivian, her auburn hair cascading over Oliver's shoulder as she straddled his lap in his executive chair. Their mouths were locked together with the desperate hunger of new lovers, her manicured fingers tangled in his dark hair, his hands gripping her waist like he owned her. They didn't hear me enter. They were too lost in each other to notice the woman who had been married to one of them for 2 years, who had shared Thanksgiving dinners with the other for 28 years of sisterhood. I stood there for what felt like an eternity but was probably only seconds, watching my entire life crumble into dust. Then Vivian opened her eyes and saw me over Oliver's shoulder. She didn't gasp. She didn't scramble away. She didn't even look surprised. She smiled. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. My name is Elena Hartwell, and until that moment I thought I knew exactly who I was. I was the wife who packed homemade lunches and left encouraging notes in briefcases. I was the sister who never missed a birthday call and always offered a shoulder to cry on. I was the daughter who visited every Sunday and pretended not to notice when Mom compared my achievements to Vivian's more glamorous career in fashion PR. I was also apparently a fool. "Oh," Vivian said, finally sliding off Oliver's lap but making no effort to fix her disheveled appearance. "Elena, you're early." Early. As if this were a scheduled appointment, as if I had somehow inconvenienced them by walking into my own husband's office. Oliver straightened his tie with practiced calm, the same way he did before client meetings. His gray eyes, the ones I'd fallen in love with during our college study sessions, met mine with something that wasn't quite guilt but wasn't quite defiance either. It was indifference. "We need to talk," he said, as if those 4 words could somehow make sense of what I'd just witnessed. "About what?" The words came out strangled, barely recognizable as my own voice. "About how long this has been going on. About how many times you've—" "Elena, please." Vivian's voice carried that familiar note of condescension she'd perfected in childhood. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Harder than it needs to be. I stared at her, really looked at her. Vivian had always been the beautiful one, the confident one, the one who could walk into any room and command attention. At 30 she was 2 years younger than me but had always acted like she was decades wiser. Today, sitting on the leather couch while Oliver remained behind his desk like this was a business meeting, she looked radiant. "How long?" I asked. Oliver and Vivian exchanged a look. The kind of intimate, conspiratorial glance that lovers share. It hit me like a physical blow. 8 months, Oliver said finally. "Since your birthday party." My birthday party. The one where Vivian had worn that stunning red dress and charmed all of Oliver's colleagues. The one where she'd stayed late to help clean up while Oliver and I argued about his increasingly long work hours. The one where I'd actually thanked her for being such a wonderful sister. 8 months, I repeated numbly. "Look, Elena," Vivian said, crossing her legs as if she were settling in for a casual chat. "I know this is a shock, but honestly it's probably for the best. You and Oliver, you've been growing apart for ages. Everyone can see it. Everyone. Our marriage was already over," Oliver added, his lawyer voice cool and measured. "This just accelerated things." The audacity was breathtaking. They sat there, the 2 people I'd trusted most in the world, and talked about my marriage like it was a business merger that had simply run its course. No apologies. No explanations about how it had happened or expressions of regret. Just matter-of-fact cruelty delivered with the casual indifference of people discussing the weather. "I want you out of the house," I said to Oliver, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. He laughed, actually laughed. "Elena, it's my house. My name is on the deed. You'll be the one leaving." "And where exactly am I supposed to go?" Vivian and Oliver exchanged another one of those looks. "Actually," Vivian said, "I've been thinking about that. Mom's been saying she's lonely since Dad passed. Maybe this is the perfect time for you to move back home. Help take care of her." Move back home. At 32, after building a life and a career as a freelance graphic designer, they wanted me to slink back to my childhood bedroom like a failure. Mom knows. The question escaped before I could stop it. Vivian's smile widened. I told her yesterday. Well, she understands. She always said Oliver was too good for her. She caught herself, but the damage was done. Too good for me. My own mother thought my husband was too good for me. She's actually excited about the idea of us all being a family, Vivian continued. She said it's about time Oliver found someone who could match his ambition. The room seemed to tilt. Not only had they been carrying on this affair for months, but they'd already involved my mother, already made plans for my displacement, already decided how to restructure everyone's lives around their betrayal. I looked at Oliver, really looked at him. The man I'd supported through law school, who'd promised to love me in sickness and health, who'd whispered that I was his everything on our wedding night. He was checking his phone. I need some air, I managed. Elena, wait, Oliver called as I headed for the door. We should discuss the practical things. The divorce, the division of assets. Assets. I turned back to face him. What assets, Oliver? Everything's in your name, remember? You insisted on it for tax purposes. He had the grace to look momentarily uncomfortable. Well, yes, but we can work something out. I'm not unreasonable. Unreasonable. The man who'd been screwing my sister for 8 months was worried about being perceived as unreasonable. I left without another word. The drive home was a blur of tears and rage and a strange detached numbness that felt like walking through a dream. Our house, Oliver's house apparently, sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in an upscale neighborhood we'd chosen together because we'd talked about filling the extra bedrooms with children someday. I sat in the driveway for 20 minutes, staring at the front door with its cheerful yellow paint and the flower boxes I'd planted last spring. Everything looked exactly the same, but I felt like an alien visiting someone else's life. Inside, the house held all the evidence of my delusion. Wedding photos on the mantel. My books mixed with his on the shelves. The coffee mug I'd used that morning still sitting in the sink, lipstick stain on the rim like a blood stain at a crime scene. I called my mother. Elena, honey. Mom's voice was carefully neutral. Vivian said you might be calling. She told you everything? She told me enough. Pause. Sweetheart, I know this is hard, but sometimes these things just happen. Oliver and Vivian, they make sense together. They're both ambitious, both successful. I'm successful, I interrupted. I have my own business. Designing wedding invitations isn't exactly. I do corporate branding, Mom. I have real clients. Of course you do, honey. But let's be honest. Vivian moves in Oliver's world. She understands his pressures, his goals. Maybe this is just natural selection. Natural selection. My mother was treating my marriage like a nature documentary. So you're taking her side? I'm not taking sides, Elena. I'm being realistic. You and Oliver have been having problems for a year. Everyone could see it. And Vivian, well, she didn't plan this. Love just happened. Love. They were calling it love. Where am I supposed to live, Mom? Well, you know you're always welcome here. Your room is exactly the same. And honestly, I could use the help. The house is getting too big for me to manage alone. There was the consolation prize. After my husband stole my sister, or my sister stole my husband, I could return home to be my mother's live-in caretaker. I need to think, I said. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Elena, try not to make this ugly. For everyone's sake. For everyone's sake. Not my sake. Everyone's. I hung up and poured myself a glass of wine. Then another. Then another. By the time Oliver came home at 9:30, I was sitting in the living room with an empty bottle and a head full of clarity. Elena, he said carefully, loosening his tie. We need to discuss logistics. The practical aspects of this transition. I've already spoken to my lawyer. Your lawyer. Elena, please don't repeat everything I say. It's childish. Childish. The woman whose life he just destroyed was being childish. I've drawn up a reasonable settlement offer, he continued, pulling a folder from his briefcase. Considering that most of our assets are premarital or in my name, I'm prepared to be generous. There's a lump sum payment and I'll cover your moving expenses. I took the folder and flipped through it without reading. How much? 25,000. It's more than fair considering. Considering what? That you've been sleeping with my sister for 8 months. Elena, I understand you're hurt. Hurt? I stood up, surprised by my own steadiness. I'm not hurt, Oliver. Hurt is when someone accidentally steps on your foot. This is devastation. This is the complete annihilation of everything I thought I knew about my life. Look, these things happen. People grow apart. People change. What Vivian and I have, it's real. It's something I've never experienced before. What about what we had? We were friends who got married because it seemed like the right time. But Elena, be honest. When was the last time you looked at me the way Vivian does? When was the last time we had a conversation about anything deeper than grocery lists and weekend plans? The terrible thing was he wasn't entirely wrong. We had grown apart. We had fallen into routines. But I'd thought that was normal, the natural evolution of marriage from passionate romance to comfortable partnership. So that gave you the right to cheat? I didn't plan this. Neither did Vivian. It just happened. For 8 months it just happened. Elena, please. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be. There was that phrase again. Don't make this difficult. As if my feelings were an inconvenience, my pain an obstacle to their happiness. I want the house, I said. Oliver laughed. Elena, be realistic. You can't afford the mortgage on your income and legally. I don't care about legally. I want the house. That's not how this works. I'm offering you a fair settlement. Take it. Or what? Or I file for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences, and you walk away with whatever the court decides to give you. Which, given that everything is in my name and we don't have children, won't be much. He had it all figured out. The lawyer had played all the angles, covered all the bases. I was supposed to take my $25,000 and disappear quietly so he could start his new life with my sister. When do you want me out? End of the month. That gives you 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. 2 weeks. He was giving me 2 weeks to dismantle a life I'd spent years building. Fine, I said. Oliver looked surprised. Fine. Fine. I'll be out by the end of the month. Good. I'm glad we can handle this maturely. 3. The man who'd been conducting a secret affair with my sister for almost a year wanted to congratulate us both on our maturity. That night, after Oliver had gone to bed in the guest room, apparently his conscience had some limits, I sat at my computer and began to plan till dawn. I've always been a researcher. It's what made me good at my job. I dug deep into client companies, understood their values and their competitors, found the perfect way to represent their story visually. Now I turned those same skills toward understanding exactly what my husband and sister had done to me. The first thing I discovered was that Oliver had been more careful than I'd given him credit for. The house, the cars, even our joint bank account. Everything was structured to minimize my claim to marital assets. Every major purchase had been timed to occur just before our marriage or justified as a business expense. Oliver Hartford, Esquire, had apparently been planning for the possibility of divorce since before our wedding day. The second thing I discovered was that this wasn't their first rodeo. It took me 3 days of digging through social media archives, cross-referencing photos and timelines, but I found the pattern. Oliver had a history of relationships with sisters. Not literally, but close female friends, business partners, women who existed in each other's social circles. His previous girlfriend had been stolen by her best friend. The woman before that had lost him to a colleague. And Vivian, my beautiful, charming sister, had her own pattern. 3 previous relationships that had ended when she'd gotten involved with men who were already attached. She collected unavailable men the way some people collected vintage wine. They hadn't fallen in love. They had found each other. 2 predators who enjoyed the hunt more than the prize. I was still processing this revelation when the doorbell rang. Vivian stood on my front porch holding a bottle of wine and wearing an expression of what I could only describe as aggressive sympathy. Elena, we need to talk. Do we? Can I come in? I stepped aside, curious despite myself. Vivian settled onto my couch, the one I'd picked out in the house she was about to live in, and poured 2 glasses of wine without asking. I know you hate me right now, she began. Actually, I don't. I'm not sure what I feel, but it's not hate. Good. Because I really think we can work through this. As sisters. As sisters. The casual entitlement was staggering. Oliver and I, we never meant for it to happen. But Elena, you have to admit you too weren't happy. You haven't been happy for months. Were you planning to tell me? Ever. Of course. We wanted to be sure. We didn't want to hurt you unnecessarily if it wasn't going to work out. How considerate. Elena, don't be sarcastic. It doesn't suit you. Vivian sipped her wine and studied me with the calculating look I was beginning to recognize. The thing is, Oliver and I are good together. Really good. We challenge each other intellectually. We have the same goals, the same interests. The same complete lack of moral compass? See, this is what I mean. This bitter, vindictive side of you. It's not attractive, Elena. It's part of why things fell apart with Oliver in the first place. I stared at her. You're blaming me for your affair? I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that maybe if you'd put more effort into your marriage, if you tried to grow with Oliver instead of staying static. I stayed static? Elena, when was the last time you read a book that wasn't a romance novel? When was the last time you had an opinion about politics or current events or anything that mattered? Oliver needs intellectual stimulation. He needs a partner who can keep up with him. The casual cruelty was breathtaking. She was sitting in my living room drinking my wine, about to move into my house with my husband, and she was explaining to me why I deserved it. What do you want, Vivian? I want us to be okay. I want you to understand that this isn't about you not being good enough. It's just about compatibility. Oliver and I are compatible in ways that you and he never were. And what about you and I? Are we compatible as sisters? Vivian's smile was radiant. Of course we are. We're family. This doesn't change that. This doesn't change that, I repeated slowly. Elena, I know it's hard to see right now, but in the long run this is going to be good for everyone. You'll find someone who's better suited to you, someone who appreciates your simpler qualities. And Oliver and I can build something real together. Simpler qualities. You know what I mean. You're nurturing and sweet and domestic. That's wonderful, but it's not what Oliver needs. He needs someone who can match his ambition, someone who understands his world. Someone like you. Exactly. Vivian finished her wine and checked her phone. I should go. Oliver's picking me up for dinner. We're meeting with the senior partners at his firm. She was already playing the role of the lawyer's wife, already networking and positioning herself in his professional world. Meanwhile, I was expected to gracefully exit stage left. Elena. Vivian paused at the door. Try not to make this harder than it has to be. For everyone's sake. There was that phrase again. The family motto apparently. After she left, I sat in my living room and felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger exactly, and it wasn't heartbreak. It was something cleaner and sharper and infinitely more dangerous. It was clarity. Margaret Reeves had the kind of presence that made opposing counsel nervous. At 55, she was silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with a reputation for taking on cases that other lawyers considered unwinnable. Her office overlooked the city from the 32nd floor, and her fees reflected her success rate. I'd found her name through a Google search for best divorce attorneys, then spent 2 days reading about her cases. She specialized in what she called high-conflict marital dissolution, divorces involving significant assets, complex custody battles, or, in my case, spouses who thought they were smarter than the system. Ms. Hartwell, she said, reviewing the settlement offer Oliver had given me. Your husband's proposal is insulting. He says it's generous. He's lying. In a marriage of 2 years with joint assets and a dual-income household, you're entitled to significantly more than this. The fact that he's structured everything to minimize your claim suggests premeditation. Premeditation. He's been planning for divorce since before you married. Look at the timeline. Every major purchase, every financial decision, every asset transfer. This man has been protecting himself from a future divorce settlement since day one. I felt sick. So he never intended for it to be permanent? I can't speak to his intentions, but I can speak to his actions. And his actions suggest a man who was always planning his exit strategy. Margaret leaned back in her leather chair and studied me. The question is, what do you want from this divorce? I want what's fair. Fair is subjective. I'm asking what you want. I thought about it. What did I want? The house. Money. Revenge. I want them to understand that I'm not going to disappear quietly. Margaret smiled for the first time since I'd entered her office. Now we're getting somewhere. Tell me about your sister. I told her everything. The affair, the timeline, the casual cruelty, Vivian's complete lack of remorse. I told her about my mother's reaction, about the family dinner where I was expected to play nice while they restructured their lives around my betrayal. Interesting, Margaret said when I finished. Your sister works in PR? Fashion PR. She represents several high-end designers. And she's building a relationship with your husband's law firm colleagues? She's already started networking with them. Apparently, she's positioning herself as the perfect lawyer's wife. Margaret made a note. What about social media? Are they being discreet? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd screenshotted. Oliver and Vivian at restaurants, at work events, at the theater. Always carefully staged to look professional, but with an intimacy that would be obvious to anyone who knew what to look for. They're being careful, Margaret observed. But not careful enough. What do you mean? Your husband is a junior partner at a prestigious firm. Image matters in his profession. Family values, stability, trustworthiness. These things affect his advancement prospects. And having an affair with his wife's sister while simultaneously manipulating marital assets to screw said wife out of a fair settlement? That's not going to play well with the senior partners. I felt a spark of something that might have been hope. What can we do? We can file for divorce on grounds of adultery. We can demand a full forensic accounting of all marital assets. We can subpoena communications between your husband and sister to establish the timeline of their affair. Will that help? It will make his life very uncomfortable. And discomfort has a way of making people more reasonable about settlements. Margaret's fee was steep, but I had just enough in my personal savings account to cover the retainer. It would leave me broke, but it would also leave Oliver and Vivian with a fight they weren't expecting. One more thing, Margaret said as I prepared to leave. You mentioned that your sister's career depends on her reputation in the fashion industry? Yes. Why? No reason. Just thinking about all our options. Oliver received the divorce papers on a Monday morning at his office. I knew this because Margaret had arranged for professional service rather than certified mail. Maximum embarrassment value. I also knew because Oliver called me within an hour, and his voice was shaking with rage. Elena, what the hell is this? Divorce papers. I thought that's what you wanted. Grounds of adultery? Forensic accounting? You're demanding half of everything. I'm demanding what I'm legally entitled to. We had an agreement. We had your unilateral proposal. I decided to decline. There was a long pause. Elena, you're making a mistake. This is going to get ugly. It's already ugly, Oliver. I'm just deciding not to pretend otherwise. I won't let you destroy my career over this. I'm not trying to destroy your career. I'm trying to get a fair divorce settlement. By dragging our private business through the courts? By making me look like what, Oliver? Like a man who cheated on his wife with her sister. Another pause. If you think you can embarrass me into giving you more money. I don't want to embarrass you. But I'm not going to disappear quietly so you can start your new life without consequences. Elena, listen to me carefully. If you proceed with this lawsuit, I will make sure you regret it. I have resources, connections. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Back down, take the settlement offer and walk away. Or this gets much worse for you. I hung up on him. Within 2 hours, Vivian was at my door. Unlike her previous visit, she wasn't bringing wine or wearing a sympathetic expression. She was furious. Elena, you have to stop this. Stop what? This ridiculous lawsuit. Do you have any idea what you're doing to Oliver's reputation? I'm getting divorced. It's a fairly common procedure. You're being vindictive and petty and it's going to backfire. Oliver has friends, Elena. Important friends. Judges, prosecutors, other lawyers. You can't win a fight against someone with his connections. Watch me. Vivian stepped closer and for the first time I saw real worry in her eyes. Elena, I'm trying to help you. If you keep pushing this, Oliver is going to destroy you. He'll make sure you never work again, never get credit, never. Never what? Never amount to anything? Never be worthy of the life I built. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. Both of you. You've decided I'm disposable, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps you're willing to throw me and then disappear so you can live happily ever after. Elena, please. Think about what you're doing. Think about Mom, about the family. I am thinking about the family. I'm thinking about what kind of family destroys one of their own and then demands she be grateful for it. Vivian's mask slipped completely. Fine. You want to play hardball? Oliver isn't the only one with connections. I work in fashion, Elena. I know photographers, journalists, social media influencers. I can make your life very difficult too. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Stop this lawsuit, or we'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. What kind of person am I, Vivian? The kind who tries to destroy her own sister's happiness out of spite. I stared at her, really looked at her. The beautiful, confident woman who had always been everything I wasn't. And for the first time in my life I saw her clearly. She wasn't confident. She was desperate. She wasn't successful. She was parasitic. She didn't win by being better. She won by taking what belonged to other people. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Elena. Get out. After she left, I called Margaret. They're rattled, I told her. Good. Rattled people make mistakes. They're also threatening to retaliate. Oliver says he has connections and Vivian says she can damage my reputation professionally. Let them try. Discovery goes both ways, Miss Hartwell. If they want to play dirty, we'll subpoena their communications and see exactly what they've been saying about you. Conspiracy to defame a spouse during divorce proceedings doesn't look good in court. What's our next move? We wait. And we document everything. Every threat, every attempt at intimidation, every contact they make. Your husband may be a lawyer, but he's not thinking like one right now. He's thinking like a guilty man who's been caught. The first crack in their perfect plan came from an unexpected source. Oliver's law firm. 2 weeks after the divorce papers were served, Margaret received a call from the senior partner requesting a meeting. Apparently, the firm had become aware of the delicate situation involving one of their junior partners and wanted to discuss options for discreet resolution. What does that mean? I asked. It means Oliver's bosses are worried about publicity. A messy divorce involving adultery and financial manipulation doesn't reflect well on the firm's reputation. So they're pressuring him to settle? They're pressuring him to make this go away quickly and quietly. Which gives us leverage. The second crack came from Vivian's world. 3 of her clients had received anonymous tips about her unprofessional conduct, and were reconsidering their contracts. Apparently, someone had been sharing details about her personal life with industry contacts. Are you behind this? I asked Margaret. I'm behind the legal strategy, she replied carefully. I can't control what other people choose to do with public information. What public information? Divorce filings are public record. Court documents detailing adultery claims are public record. If someone chose to research those records and share relevant information with your sister's professional contacts, well, that's not illegal. I was beginning to understand why Margaret commanded such high fees. The third crack was the most satisfying. Oliver's mother called me. Heidi Hartford had never been warm to me during our marriage, but she'd always been polite. Now she sounded genuinely distressed. Elena, dear, I just heard about the situation. The situation? About Oliver and your sister. I want you to know that I had no idea and I'm absolutely horrified. Thank you, Heidi. That means a lot. I raised my son better than this. His father would be rolling over in his grave. She paused. Elena, I know this is presumptuous, but I hope you'll fight for what you deserve. Don't let them push you around. After I hung up, I realized that Oliver hadn't just lost a wife. He'd lost the respect of his family, his colleagues, and probably himself, even if he wasn't ready to admit it yet. The pressure was building, and it was only a matter of time before something gave way. The final confrontation happened at the law firm's offices, in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Oliver sat across from me, flanked by 2 attorneys, while Margaret sat beside me with a stack of documents thick enough to choke a horse. Oliver looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. The golden boy lawyer was showing cracks. Let's cut to the chase, Margaret began. My client is prepared to accept a settlement of $200,000, half the value of the marital home, and lifetime alimony of $3,000 per month. Oliver's lead attorney, a thin man named Patterson, barely suppressed a laugh. Ms. Reeves, that's completely unreasonable. The marriage was only 2 years long. There are no children. There's also documented adultery, financial manipulation, and conspiracy to defraud my client of marital assets, Margaret interrupted. Plus credible threats of retaliation and defamation. Your client isn't exactly negotiating from a position of strength. We dispute the characterization of financial manipulation. Do you dispute the adultery? Silence. Do you dispute that your client structured marital assets to minimize his wife's claims? More silence. Do you dispute that your client and his paramour, who happens to be my client's sister, have made threatening statements regarding my client's reputation and livelihood? Oliver finally spoke. Elena, please. Let's be reasonable here. I am being reasonable. I'm asking for half of what we built together, plus support while I rebuild my life. You're offering me less than you'd pay for a car. The house alone is worth $400,000. You're asking for half of that plus a cash settlement plus alimony. That's more than I can afford. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to cheat on me with my sister. Oliver's composure finally cracked. Elena, I'm trying to be fair here, but you're being vindictive. This whole lawsuit, this media attention, dragging our personal business through the courts. Media attention? I interrupted. Don't pretend you don't know. Someone's been feeding information to journalists, to bloggers, to social media influencers. My firm is getting calls from reporters asking about my domestic situation. Vivian's lost 3 major clients because of rumors about her personal life. I looked at Margaret, who maintained a perfectly neutral expression. Mr. Hartford, she said, if you're concerned about media attention, perhaps you should consider why your story is attracting interest. Affairs happen every day. They don't usually make headlines unless there's something particularly newsworthy about them. What's that supposed to mean? It means that a junior partner at a prestigious law firm manipulating marital assets while conducting an affair with his wife's sister makes for compelling copy. Especially when that same lawyer threatens retaliation against his wife for demanding a fair settlement. Oliver turned pale. You've been talking to journalists? I don't talk to journalists, Mr. Hartford. But I can't control what public records they choose to examine or what conclusions they draw from those records. Patterson leaned forward. Ms. Reeves, if you're suggesting that you've orchestrated some kind of media campaign. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm simply observing that public interest in this case seems to be growing. In fact, I received a call yesterday from a producer at Channel 7. Apparently, they're considering a segment on how divorce law can be manipulated to disadvantage women. The room went dead quiet. Of course, Margaret continued, a quick, fair settlement would eliminate the need for any further media attention. My client isn't interested in publicity. She just wants what she's entitled to. Oliver looked like he was going to be sick. Elena, you can't do this. My career. Your career will survive, Oliver. It might even be enhanced by showing that you can handle personal adversity with grace and integrity. This isn't grace and integrity. This is extortion. No, I said quietly. This is consequences. We stared at each other across the polished conference table, and I saw the exact moment when Oliver realized he'd lost. Not just the marriage, not just the money, but the narrative. He'd expected me to disappear quietly, to absorb the pain and humiliation in private while he moved on with his new life. Instead, I'd forced him to confront the public consequences of his choices. I need to discuss this with my client, Patterson said. Of course, Margaret replied. We'll give you 24 hours to respond. Oliver called me that evening, bypassing the lawyers entirely. Elena, we need to talk. Just us. I don't think that's a good idea. Please. One conversation. Without attorneys, without threats, without any of this legal maneuvering. Just us. Something in his voice made me agree. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory where neither of us held any memories. Oliver looked exhausted. The confident lawyer who had dismissed me so casually in his office was gone, replaced by a man who seemed to have aged years in weeks. I never wanted it to happen like this, he said without preamble. How did you want it to happen? I don't know. Cleaner, I guess. More civilized. You mean you wanted me to disappear without making noise? Oliver ran his hands through his hair. Elena, I know you hate me. I know I've hurt you in ways I can't even fully understand. But we were friends once. We cared about each other once. Can't we end this without destroying each other? I'm not trying to destroy you, Oliver. I'm trying to survive this. The media attention, the legal bills, the public humiliation. This isn't survival. This is revenge. I studied his face, looking for any trace of the man I'd once loved. Do you regret it? Any of it? I regret hurting you. I regret the way it happened. I regret that we couldn't find a way to end our marriage before Vivian. But you don't regret her. No, he said quietly. I don't regret her. At least he was honest. Elena, what do you really want from this? What would make you feel like justice has been served? I thought about it. What did I want? I wanted my life back, but that was impossible. I wanted my marriage back, but that was unthinkable. I wanted my sister back, but that was unforgivable. I want to know that there are consequences for what you did. I want to know that you can't just discard people when they become inconvenient. There have been consequences. My reputation, my relationship with my family, my standing at the firm. Those aren't consequences, Oliver. Those are natural results of your choices. Consequences would be actually paying a price for what you took from me. Oliver was quiet for a long moment. What if I agreed to Margaret's terms? The full settlement, the alimony, everything. Why would you do that? Because I'm tired, Elena. I'm tired of fighting, tired of the stress, tired of looking over my shoulder waiting for the next shoe to drop. I just want this to be over. And Vivian, how does she feel about you giving me half your net worth? Oliver's laugh was bitter. Vivian thinks I should fight harder. She thinks you're bluffing, that you'll back down if we apply enough pressure. What do you think? I think I never really knew you at all. The Elena I married would never have done any of this. She would have taken the original settlement and disappeared. The Elena you married trusted you. She believed in the promises you made. She thought her husband and her sister were fundamentally decent people. And now she knows better. We sat in silence for a while, watching the evening crowd hurry past the windows. Finally, Oliver spoke. I'll agree to the settlement. All of it. What about Vivian? What about her? She's not going to be happy about this. Are you prepared for that? Oliver's smile was rueful. Elena, in the past month I've learned something interesting about your sister. She's very good at wanting things that belong to other people. She's less enthusiastic about the cost of actually having them. Meaning she was excited about being with a successful lawyer. She's less excited about being with a broke lawyer who's damaged goods in his profession. I felt an unexpected stab of sympathy for him. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choices. Now I get to live with them. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. Oliver kept the house but had to take out a substantial loan to pay me my share of its value. Combined with the cash settlement and alimony arrangement, I walked away with enough money to buy my own place and start over. More importantly, I walked away with something I hadn't expected: self-respect. The media attention that had so terrified Oliver turned out to be a blessing in disguise. A journalist who'd been following the case introduced me to a non-profit organization that helped women navigate high-conflict divorces. They offered me a position as a communications coordinator, using my design skills to help other women tell their stories. My first project was creating a website for women who'd been financially manipulated during divorce proceedings. The tagline I designed read, "Your story matters. Your voice counts. You deserve better." It felt like a mission statement for my new life. Vivian tried to reach out several times in the months following the settlement. Voicemails that started apologetic and grew increasingly desperate as her professional life continued to unravel. Apparently, the fashion industry had less tolerance for personal drama than she'd anticipated. I never returned her calls. My mother, surprisingly, began to come around. It started with awkward phone conversations where she avoided mentioning Oliver or Vivian, then progressed to actual visits where she seemed genuinely interested in my new life and work. "I think I may have misjudged the situation," she said during one visit, as close to an apology as I was likely to get. "You think? Your father always said you were the strong one." I thought he meant emotionally strong, nurturing strong. I didn't realize he meant steel spine strong. I didn't realize it either until I had to be. 6 months after the settlement, I got a call from Margaret. "Have you seen the news?" she asked. "What news?" "Turn on Channel 7. I flipped to the local news station just in time to catch the tail end of a segment about professional misconduct in the legal field. Oliver's photo flashed on the screen as the anchor discussed a recent ethics investigation involving improper handling of client funds and conflicts of interest. "What does this mean?" I asked Margaret. "It means your ex-husband's problems have expanded beyond his divorce. Apparently, the scrutiny that started with our case led to deeper investigations into his professional conduct." "Is this connected to what we did?" "Not directly. But sometimes when you shine a light in dark corners, you find more than you expected." I watched the news segment with mixed feelings. I hadn't wanted Oliver to be destroyed, just held accountable. But actions have consequences, and his had apparently extended far beyond our marriage. The real headline came 3 days later, not on television but in my email inbox. It was from a producer at a major television network, asking if I'd be interested in consulting on a documentary series about women who'd fought back against betrayal and manipulation. "We're calling it The Reckoning," the email read. "We want to tell stories about women who refused to be victims, who turned their pain into power and their betrayal into justice. Your case has become something of a legend in legal circles, the woman who wouldn't disappear quietly." I stared at the email for a long time before responding. A year ago, I would have been mortified by the idea of my personal life becoming public entertainment. Now, I saw it as an opportunity to help other women understand that they didn't have to accept betrayal silently. "I'm interested," I wrote back. "But I want editorial control over how my story is told. And I want part of the proceeds to go to organizations that help women in similar situations." The documentary aired 8 months later. The episode about my case was titled, "I Walked Into My Husband's Office and Found My Sister Sitting on His Lap. What I Did Next Made Headlines." It was the highest-rated episode of the series. I live in a small house in the Arts District now, with exposed brick walls and huge windows that fill the space with light. My design business has grown beyond anything I'd imagined, fueled in part by referrals from women who'd seen the documentary and wanted to work with someone who understood the power of controlling your own narrative. I'm dating someone new, a teacher named Franklin who thinks my story is inspiring rather than scandalous, who admires my strength rather than being intimidated by it. We're taking things slowly, building something based on honesty and mutual respect rather than convenience and assumption. Oliver moved to another state after his law license was suspended. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he's working for a small firm doing real estate closings, a far cry from his previous ambitions. He and Vivian broke up 7 months after the settlement, apparently unable to survive the transition from forbidden romance to mundane reality. Vivian tried to rebuild her career in PR but found that reputation follows you in small industries. The last I heard, she was working for a corporate communications firm in another city, a respectable but unremarkable job that pays the bills but doesn't feed her ego. My mother and I have rebuilt our relationship on new terms. She comes to dinner every Sunday and we talk about books and politics and my work with the nonprofit. She never mentions Oliver or Vivian unless I bring them up first, which I rarely do. I don't hate them anymore. Not Oliver, not Vivian, not even myself for the years I spent being someone smaller than I needed to be. Hate is exhausting and I have better things to do with my energy. But I haven't forgiven them either. Forgiveness implies that what they did was forgivable and I don't believe it was. You don't forgive someone for murder because they seem sorry about it afterward. You don't forgive betrayal just because the betrayers have moved on. Instead, I've done something more powerful. I've moved beyond them entirely. Sometimes, late at night when I'm working on a new project or reading in my living room, I think about that afternoon when I walked into Oliver's office and found my world ending. I think about the woman I was then, trusting, accommodating, willing to make herself smaller to avoid conflict. That woman is gone, not destroyed but transformed. In her place is someone harder and wiser and infinitely more dangerous to people who mistake kindness for weakness. The documentary producer was right about one thing. I had become something of a legend in certain circles. Not as a victim who'd been wronged, but as a woman who'd refused to accept that being wronged was the end of her story. My phone rings sometimes with calls from women in similar situations, women who found my number through the nonprofit or heard about my case through friends of friends. They always start the same way: I don't know what to do. I feel so powerless. And I always tell them the same thing: you're not powerless. You just haven't figured out how to use your power yet. Because that's what I learned in those months of legal battles and media attention and family drama. Everyone has power. The question is whether you're willing to use it. I was. And it made all the difference. The headlines that followed weren't just about my case. They were about a choice. The choice to fight back, to demand better, to refuse to disappear quietly into someone else's narrative of your life. It's a choice every woman faces at some point in some form. And when they ask me about it now, when they want to know how I found the courage to fight when everything seemed stacked against me, I tell them the truth. I didn't find courage. I found clarity. And once you see clearly, everything else becomes possible.